I'm actually feeling quite, well, yeah, quite moved and a little kind of overwhelmed, because I'm actually in Bhante's sitting room. We don't, you know, usually if you're leading a retreat, you have a shrine behind you. I've got an old armchair, yeah, and this is one of a succession of armchairs that I've seen Bhante sit in over about 45 years, I suppose, of coming to see him in different places. So yeah, I'm in the place where I used to come and see him in the last few years of his life, in what we used to call the annex at Bodhicitta, which has now become Urgyen House. Yeah, so this is where Bhante would sit, and I would sit over there, and I wouldn't be wearing a kesa. And if I could help it, I certainly wouldn't be wearing a sweater, because it used to be sweltering. I mean, it's a bit chilly in here this morning, but it used to be sweltering hot, because Bhante, I think he did have some Hungarian blood, and you know, he'd spent all those years in India, and he really liked heat. And then, you know, he was getting into his 90s, you know, when I'd come and see him here. So the temperature was tropical, and so yes, I'd come and see him, and I haven't actually been in this room since he died, so coming back in this morning is quite a strong thing. And yeah, it's just thrown me into sort of memories of meetings with Bhante here. Yeah, some very beautiful, moving meetings, sometimes quite ordinary, sometimes I'd just be leading a retreat and I'd asked to see him, but I didn't have a lot to talk about, and we'd end up talking about what he'd been reading and who he'd been seeing, what he'd been thinking about. But always at the end, in those last few years particularly, you know, when I went to say goodbye, we'd both be aware that it might be the last chance we would get to see one another. So he'd always take my hands in his and very sort of wholeheartedly sort of hold them, and it felt like a blessing. It's almost like he was putting that sort of spirit of Bodhicitta, you know, into me through his hands. And yeah, there was a meeting. I don't really remember much about my last meeting here. I didn't know it was going to be the last meeting, but the one before, I was sitting looking at him, sitting in this chair, and he was sort of transfigured. He looked completely surrounded by white light, and it wasn't just that his hair was completely white. I'm sort of very mildly psychic, but I don't see auras and things around people. But on that day, yeah, he was just, it was like he sort of was White Tara or something. There was just all this whiteness and something very, very beautiful there. It was not long after he'd come out of hospital having had pneumonia. And I went away and wrote something in Shabda about it. It kind of reminded me of the Lord of the Rings, where you have Gandalf the Grey, you know, the wizard, who then disappears and seems to be lost, having had a nasty encounter with the Balrog. And then later in the book, he reappears as Gandalf the White. I felt like I'd met Sangharakshita the White somehow in that meeting. So yeah, I'd had all these meetings with Bhante, and they were all yeah, Bhante had his flaws and his failings, but I never had any doubt that he was on the Bodhisattva path. I never had any doubt that that was central to him. And we had all kinds of meetings, you know, sort of official meetings when I was like his secretary, or I was overall order convener. So sometimes we'd be talking about the whole order and what we'd done in order convention. But looking back on it, nearly all of it was about people and how they could transform themselves, or how we could set up the conditions for them. When I was overall order convener, yes, we talk about Shabda and things like that. But a lot of the time we just talk about individual people and how they were doing. And there would be this order member or that order member who was a bit out on the edge of things, and we were concerned, and what could we do? And I always found Bhante incredibly kind in that way. So somehow I feel like this room, in my mind, links to a room in Kalimpong, where Bhante received the Bodhisattva vow from Dada Rinpoche and then studied the Bodhicitta precepts with him. And I know that that was a very, very central event in Bhante's life. And yes, I'm really pleased that the reason why we're in this room, and we won't be in this room all the time, is because there are 16 women having their public ordination here later today. Yes, sadhu. But I'm really pleased somehow that we just start in this space. I feel like it connects with a whole lot of other spaces, connected with Bodhicitta, and yeah, going back to Bhante and Dada Rinpoche and Kalimpong, and back through his teachers, back and back and back. Yeah, I know that for Bhante, Bodhicitta was the heart of Buddhism. It really was. It was the heart of his practice. And it's the heart of Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism. And it's the heart of early Buddhism, actually. The Buddha had 60 Arahant disciples, and he gathers them together and asks them to wander for the good of the many, for the welfare of the world. And they don't go, oh, we're Arahants, we don't do that kind of thing. They happily go. They spread the Dharma to be of benefit to beings. And even if you go back in the Pali Canon to the account of the Buddha and his awakening, part of it is that whole episode with Brahmasampati, where the Buddha's thinking, the Dharma is just too difficult, and how is anyone going to see it? It goes so against the grain, so against the tendencies that we have. And he thinks of not teaching, and then Brahmasampati appears and encourages him. And the Buddha looks out and sees all these beings like lotuses. So we've got like 130 lotuses on the retreat, all in different stages of development, and we can look out at one another and just see that potential there. Yeah, some of us with a bit more dust on our eyes or a bit less dust, which is another image that's in that sutta, which is incidentally is quite interesting, that right in the heart of that Pali Canon account of the Buddha's awakening, you have both an image of development and one of something that's already there. It's just clouded over. You just need to remove the defilements that prevent you from seeing things clearly. But you know, that faculty is already there. So yeah, in different ways, Bodhicitta goes right the way through Buddhism, right down through 2,500 years, down to all this modern technology with us, wherever we are in the world, looking at a screen and using this to open our hearts in different ways. So I don't want to talk for too long. I want to go into meditation, and I'd like to start very sort of simply. I always believe that in retreats, it's best to go back to basics to start with and then build from there. So I'd like to do a meditation where we just ground ourselves and breathe. Maybe it's worth saying, though, that this Bodhicitta practice, as you know, it's one of the 4 Mula yogas. It's one of the root yogas that are practiced in the Tibetan tradition and in our tradition. And it follows on from the prostration practice, going for refuge and prostration. So there's the going for refuge, and then this practice strengthens that altruistic dimension of that. But it's also worth thinking about, if you do it in the traditional way, before you do this practice, you've usually done 100,000 prostrations, which means you've thrown yourself on the ground. If you do it the full way, I won't do that because I'll take the screen out. and lay waste to the whole setup. But yeah, if you do the full prostrations 100,000 times, you throw yourself to the ground 100,000 times, you meet the earth 100,000 times, and that's really, really grounding. So it's not a bad thing if we start by really grounding ourselves, just to kind of honor that fact. And also, if we're going to turn towards the suffering of the world, then we need to resource ourselves to do that. If we try to take on suffering without resources, we lose badly and it doesn't work. We just end up being part of the problem rather than part of the solution. So part of what we're going to be doing over these days is making sure we've really gathered the resources to do this practice deeply and effectively. And one of those simple resources that we can draw on is the earth. We need to make sure that we're really well grounded so that it's as if we're anchored, so that when the winds of suffering blow upon us, as they do, sometimes gently and sometimes like Hurricane Henrietta or whatever, at that point, we're not just capsized, we're not just blown over because we're so well anchored, we're grounded. It's one of the skills of meditation is that we can learn to contain really strong emotions, really strong reactions, partly just through the strength of our groundedness in meditation. So let's do a little bit of that, shall we? And I'll guide you through. So once we've found a comfortable position, let's start by not starting. Let's do nothing just for a minute or two. So all the pressure's off. Don't need to do anything. Don't need to go anywhere. Don't need to be anyone special for anyone. Just let everything be as it is. Just noticing what's going on now. Noticing the quality of how we're noticing. Letting it be kindly. Letting it be understanding. Now let's bring our awareness down to the ground. If it helps, you might want to just feel or imagine awareness coming down through the body, down, down, down. Down to where we feel the connection with the ground. With the floor, with the seat. Noticing the actual sensations that tell us that the body's connected to the earth, to the ground. Now feeling or imagining awareness, energy going down, down into the earth beneath us. So we really are anchoring ourselves. Rooting ourselves in the earth. Letting any tensions flow down, flow into the earth, flow away. Savoring that sense of stability and support of the earth. That sense of being grounded. Now, out of that, we let the spine open. We let the upper body rise up. So we're poised between earth and sky. Now bringing awareness into the body. Feeling into any aspect of the body that would appreciate our attention. How is it to be embodied now? And again, doing this with as much kindness and sympathy for ourselves as we can muster. The great tree of Bodhicitta grows out of these tiny seeds of kindness, moment by moment. That's where it starts. That's how it expresses itself. So everything included in a field of kindly awareness. The fleeting, changing sensations. Feelings and emotions. Even rambling thoughts. All just held in kindly awareness. Now let's focus on the sensations that tell us that we're breathing. In the nostrils, the throat, the chest, the belly, the whole body. We really feel subtly. Let's focus on the in-breath for a minute. Let's breathe in with a sense of taking in life, opening to life. In recent months, many of us have been in bubbles of different sorts, keeping a lot of life at bay. And then there's the bubble of our own self-reference and self-concern that's there, pandemic or no. So let's see if with each in-breath we can let the fullness of life be welcome, not holding it at bay. And with each out-breath, there can be a sense of relaxing into the flow of life. Letting go, not holding back. So let's just practice like this, just for 3 or 4 minutes. Breathing in, opening to life, letting it right in. Letting ourselves be affected. Just as the in-breath comes in and breaks up the current situation with fresh life. And breathing out, not holding back, relaxing into the flow of life. And as we come to the end of the meditation, take a few moments to be aware of this wonderful, paradoxical world that we're in, all in our different spaces, breathing, and yet all linked, all part of one meditation, all breathing together, opening to life, relaxing into life. All strongly connected, breathing together. And to conclude, sharing the benefits of the practice with everyone on the retreat, with those 16 women joining our order in a few hours' time, sharing it with all life. And say a few words, or we could just dedicate with a simple out breath, holding nothing back. Okay, time for a break.